studio today at two Mississippi museums for Empower Mississippi's third annual Unleash Mississippi event. And we welcome to the program now Gerard Smith, Senior Fellow with Right on Crime. Gerard, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Gerard.
And thanks for being in Mississippi. So tell us about the Right on Crime organization. What do you advocate for?
Sure. So Right on Crime is a part of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a think tank dedicated to conservative principles. Right on Crime chiefly focuses on creating more smart on crime policies, which have a focus around public safety first. If we're going to reform our justice system, the first thing we should pay attention to is doing no harm. We want to create a safer environment, but also create a fairer justice system.
Yeah. Makes total sense. So how are we doing in Mississippi specifically? Of course, you're here today. I think you're going to be one of our panelists later on the program, right, when we talk about justice. We've made some progress in Mississippi. I think we got a ways to go. How do we stand relative to, say, Texas and some of the other states in your view?
Sure. You know, we're in an interesting environment post-pandemic when you've seen in major metropolitans a push by the left to defund the police, which is demoralize police departments, and do policy reforms that don't always protect public safety. And so what we've been championing is reforming our system in a way that's going to keep the community safe, but allow for opportunity. A good example of that, prior to joining Right on Crime, I was Deputy Assistant for Domestic Policy to President Trump, and I was the lead negotiator for his reform effort called the First Step Act. Yeah. But the First Step Act focused on reducing recidivism, reducing people's probability of returning to prison, and we were very successful at doing that. We lowered recidivism rates from 40% down to 12%, and so that's less crime that law enforcement has to work about. That's how we have to look at justice reform. You know, we want to reform prisons in a way that's going to make sure people don't do crime again, and create safer communities, and that's a North Star, and that's some of the things that we're trying to push at Right on Crime, similar policies like that.
You know, it's no secret, Gerard, we're seeing a crime wave, honestly, across the country, and in particular in many of America's really large cities, and we're seeing retailers complain about that, of course, all the smash and grabs. We're seeing the citizens of the cities. We've even got the city of San Francisco, where I think the federal government has offices in downtown San Francisco and told its staff don't come to work, stay at home because of their fear of the safety risk in downtown San Francisco. I think one of the challenges, of course, to getting common sense criminal justice reforms implemented and get the public to support it is that they often see that and confuse that with what's going on in many of these cities where they're just not prosecuting true crime.
That's exactly right. And like I said earlier, you also have city councils that are creating a bigger magnet for crime, as they're not they're passing laws that's not holding criminals accountable. Right. And then calling that criminal justice reform. That's not the way that should reform the system. We also need to ensure that we have a police department that's prepared to act if they need to. If the areas of the community that need the police most have created, their leaders have created a situation where police are afraid to go in there, that's not helping the community. Sure. I mean, 80% of low-income communities, black, white, Hispanic, all of them want more police, not less. And so a combination of not having accountability through our laws and our legislators, and not having a police force has created a powder keg in those communities. And so what we've been suggesting and recommending as our organization, Right on Crime, and also in my position as the chair of Public Safety Solutions for America, is that we need to fund the police. We need to have the police focus on solving violent crime and preventing violent crime. And then thirdly, we need evidence-based policies. If we know it doesn't work, let's not enact laws that may create more crime. And then lastly, like I said before, we have to continue to do smart on crime policies that put public safety first.
And then the incarceration aspect of justice as well. It seems like all too often we do lock up people that haven't really hurt anyone else, haven't committed any sort of violent crime. They haven't committed any sort of burglary or taking anybody's stuff, as I like to say. Maybe they were just caught with simple possession of drugs, which violates our laws. Maybe they have a drug use problem, an abuse problem, and then we just lock them up. And then when we let them out, they still have that problem. They're not really addressing that.
They sometimes become worse criminals inside our justice system.
Yeah.
And those are the parts we need to reform, because 95% of individuals that go to prison, we know that they're coming home. And so how are they coming home? And so part of the provisions of the First Step Act did things by looking at a person's individual criminology and then assigning recidivism reduction programming to that criminology. Whether it was mental health, drug abuse, or family reunification, or they just needed to learn some new skills so that they can figure out a passion in life that would get them focused. All of those things have been proven to work, and we call those evidence-based policies, and they reduce recidivism. But we also are clear that there are individuals that just intend to do harm, and you can't necessarily, that won't do a program,
right?
That's not trying to change their lives, and that's why we need a strong justice system for those bad apples. And that's the nuanced approach that Right on Crime is advocating for.
And let's also be clear that any sort of advocacy for common sense criminal justice reforms does not include just letting people commit super violent, heinous acts of crime without punishment, without the proper punishment. And it may be that they just have to be locked up forever. I mean, crime could rise to that level. So it's not about just creating a revolving door where the people just come in, get booked, and go out, which is what we're seeing a lot in American cities. That's not really criminal justice reform.
No, it's not.
It's more political is what it is.
I mean, honestly, that's part of the problem. You can't politicize reforming our justice system, because if you do it in the wrong way, there's unintended consequences of people losing their lives, or someone getting hurt. What I've been advocating, I just recently wrote a book called Underserved, Harnessing Lincoln's Vision for Reconstruction for Today's Forgotten Communities. I wrote that with a colleague, Chris Pilkerton, that I work with in the White House. And the strategy that we've advocated in that book is taking a holistic approach. We realize that some of these things don't happen in a vacuum. Obviously, if you have a poor education system and a lack of jobs, you're more likely to kind of maybe do other things like commit crime. In the same scenario, it's hard to get jobs, economic development in a place that's crime ridden. So we advocate for holistic solutions, looking at education, looking at opportunity, looking at social impact programs around behavioral health. A lot of individuals have lived in communities for 3-4 generations of not having a father in the household, not having intact families, been around drug abuse. And so this creates a mentality that needs more than just what the system can offer in the behavioral health world, or even churches trying to change the human heart. And so at the same time that the government has a role with accountability, we need to rebuild civil society and reimagine community, because ultimately we're all in this together.
Yeah. And I think about just the drug abusers and how many we have in Mississippi that are just locked up for simple possession for a fairly extended period of time. I don't feel like they're getting the resources they need to address that problem that got them there to start with. I know our Commissioner of Corrections, Burl Cain, understands this, and he advocates for that. But what do we need to be doing there? Well,
that's the right way to go about it, is creating infrastructure that's tapping into the churches, tapping into the nonprofits, and creating a scenario where we're not necessarily penalizing person for an abuse problem, but we're getting them the help they need. But even in that scenario, a person has to want to change, and it's our job just to create the right infrastructure for opportunity for those that want to change, to help change them. And in many cases, the only solution is to put someone in a jail, and that's just, we got to have more opportunity and more scenarios than just jail, because right now our prisons are full. Law enforcement is overwhelmed, and so we have to kind of look at how law enforcement can partner with social workers, partner with mental health professionals, and figure out a better infrastructure that's going to make sure that those who fall through the cracks because of addiction get the help that they need.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Well, it's an interesting topic. There's been a lot of momentum behind it. I think it's fair to say President Trump, whom you said you worked for, probably brought that to the forefront and got that in focus more than any other president that I can remember, honestly. And he kind of surrounded himself with people such as yourself for that effort and got the bill passed.
Amen.
As well. So appreciate you coming on, Gerard, and look forward to talking to you later on today.
Thanks so much, Gerard.
You got it. We're coming right back with Arkansas State Senator Breanne Davis.